Hello and welcome to Conversations with a Conch. I'm your host, Alex Holden, and today I will be speaking with MP Travis Robinson. Travis, as you will hear, at 22 years old, was elected as the youngest MP to serve on a country's legislative body, not only in the Bahamas, but the Caribbean. 2 weeks later, he was appointed to the position of Parliamentary Secretary for Tourism at the Ministry of Tourism. He is the founder of the Rising Star Foundation, which focuses on mentorship for young students aspiring to be young leaders. He has also founded the eponymous Bain and Grantstown Center for Academic Development. In 2017, he was one of the 5 winners of the One Young World Politician of the Year award, announced in the One Young World Summit held in The Hague, Netherlands. He currently serves as the Member of Parliament for his constituency, Bain and Grantstown, which is one of the oldest and most historic communities in the Bahamas. I wanted to have this conversation with Travis to explore some of the unique challenges facing the Bahamas at this time. We explore COVID-19, hurricanes, economic outlook, and the difficulties of governing in a pandemic in particular. We also discuss personal empowerment and hope in times of uncertainty, while touching on what a possible road to recovery might look like. Thank you for listening, and now I bring you Travis Robinson.
Hello.
Hi, Travis.
Hey.
Hey. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yes, it's my pleasure to be here.
Sure. Well, what I will have done is I will have introduced you at the top with your various accomplishments and your accolades and your current position. For anyone who might not know you, perhaps our international listeners, maybe you could introduce yourself uh, as well.
Um, I'm not certain as to what all you have said, but my name is Travis L. Robinson. I am a Bahamian and citizen of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I attended Stephen Dillett Primary School and went on to T.A. Thompson Junior High School, where I was the head boy there, or what you would call the class president. And then I went on to C.R. Walker Senior High School, where I also served as the head boy as well, and or in the American term, class president. I went on to the University of the Bahamas, where I studied tourism management. And I just recently completed my studies with a Bachelor of Science in Tourism Management. As you would know, I'm sure the introduction would have alluded to me. I'm the Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism and Aviation for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I was the Gentleman of the Year in the Gentleman Club of the Bahamas, which is a mentorship and elite program that deals with high school 12th graders at that time from all public and private institutions in the Bahamas. I went on to win the One Young World political young political leader of the year award in The Hague, the Netherlands, as well as to become one of the United Nations 100 persons most influential persons of African descent for the United Nations Secretariat. And along with some other accomplishments, but I think that would be the gist of it so far. I am a young, black, educated Bahamian male, and I'm pleased to be a part of this podcast.
Well, thank you. That is an incredibly impressive portfolio of accreditations, and I'm actually extremely happy that I can add one more accreditation to your list. I don't know if you know this, but you are actually the first guest of Conversation with a Conch.
Yeah, I I am privileged. I don't know if that makes me the honorary King Conch.
No, so just for again for our guests who might not know, actually I am the conch. Conch in Bahamian context and vernacular and vocabulary is often used as sometimes used as a pejorative for Bahamians of European descent, white Bahamians, and often it alludes to that it means that they are stupid, like the conch that just crawl across the ground. And
Correct.
the reason I thought it was fitting was that in all of these conversations, and especially this one, I will be speaking on topics in which I am the conch, and I will be seeking to learn from a much more educated interlocutor.
Absolutely.
So
So you're the
yeah,
Conch, aka Scrumbus Gagas.
exactly. Now you get it.
Yeah.
So we're in quite a unique situation, and it's unique for you as well. We recently came off of one of the worst hurricanes our country has ever faced,
Mhm.
Hurricane Dorian, the worst one since since Hurricane Andrew, and now we're facing possibly the worst pandemic since the 1918 flu.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is where what I'd like to discuss with you: politics in a pandemic, governing, the challenges of governance, and whatever we can get onto. So for international listeners, especially, I'd just like to give some details of the situation, maybe frame it. We're coming into maybe month sixth or seven of basically lockdown conditions where we are trying to stifle and suppress the coronavirus in our nation. And what makes this situation unique is we are in the Bahamas. We're on the capital island. That's where we're recording this. We're on phones, so we're not spreading disease ourselves. But the Bahamas, for anyone who doesn't know, is an archipelago of 700 islands, about 32 of which are inhabited, with 370,000 people of mostly African descent, but with some European settlers' descent, and a sizable population of uh, immigrants from Haiti also. So what's interesting about the situation is the ocean separates all the islands and creates a sort of natural barrier for the coronavirus. So it actually helps us, but our economy is mostly tourism based. I would say I would estimate about 8 out of 10 of our tourism dollars come from 8 out of 10 of our economic dollars come from tourism. And with the borders closed, obviously we're slowing the virus, but we're also stopping the dollars. Now, in March, we had all but had the situation under control. We had maybe 6 to 10 cases, and we actually got down to zero active cases. But the situation that we're in now is actually it's changed. It is August 20th at the time of recording, and we opened up a couple weeks ago, let American visitors in to try and stimulate the economy safely, making sure they came in with coronavirus free tests. And now we're in a predicament where we have 1,500 active cases, and this is the situation. So, Travis, what are your impressions of the situation we're in?
Well, we are at a pivotal juncture where no one government alone can remedy the situation that we are currently experiencing in the Bahamas. As you mentioned, Hurricane Dorian is perhaps the worst hurricane on record, not just in the Bahamas, but in the entire Caribbean and the Western Hemisphere. in a very, very long time. We have had to grapple a situation where Hurricane Dorian devastated the second largest economic engine in the Bahamas, which would have been Grand Bahama, or is commonly referred to as Freeport. And as well, it knocked out our third largest economic engine, that of Abaco. So we only have now Nassau, or New Providence, the island, that
Mm-hmm.
is the main economic engine in the Bahamas that is functioning. So you have a country where its second and third largest economic engines have been knocked out, and so we're like, for a lack of a better term, we're like an animal limping on 3 feet. And so the challenge is great. There is no one solution or broad fix it bound to the challenges that we are currently experiencing. And then, as of March, compounded by the first recorded COVID 19 case in the Bahamas that now stands at 1,500 plus cases. There are no amount of uh, actions or words that can remedy the challenges we are facing at this current time in the immediate effect. And my personal view is, if we are going to get through this, we will only get through this as a community and as a team, with all Bahamians and residents on board with the government's vision and plan to be
Mm-hmm.
able to bring about the best possible solutions that
Mm-hmm.
can help to remedy the challenges that we are experiencing. And
Mm-hmm.
I will say that at this time.
Very good, very good. So it's not too pretty of a picture, and I'd like to remind anyone listening, international or domestic, that we actually have what is it, two potential hurricanes on the way. I just went out and did my hurricane preparedness today. Is that the case?
Yes, at current, and more specifically, as of today, the 20th of August 2020, we have a pending storm that is headed our way for Sunday, Monday, as of the month of August, from the today,
Mm-hmm.
which is the 20th.
Excellent, excellent. So I want to tell the story of how I met you when I first met you, and that will segue into my next question for you.
Mm.
I believe I was doing some business at the Ministry of Tourism, at which you were working as the parliamentary secretary, and I was it was the Minister for Tourism, Mr. Diaguilar, who introduced you to me, and he said that you were a superstar. Now, what's interesting, and I totally agree with him. Your portfolio of accolades and your attention to detail, the care you have for your community, and just the amount of effort that you put into everything that you do, by definition, it really does make you a superstar. But the crises that we're dealing with right now, if you look on social media or anything like that, you will see that a lot of citizens are extremely upset, and they seem to be directing their anger at at politicians. And yeah, I just wanted to know, how do you feel? Do you feel like a superstar?
Um, you know, in every story, you have a superstar, you have a superhero, and you have a villain, and so someone must play a character part. But the animosity, the anger, and frustration that the public and residents thereof are feeling towards governments and public officials are not directly as a result of anything in particular that the public would have done or the public officials failed to do. But I believe that it is a human nature and human behavior when they are frustrated by anything. It doesn't have to be a pandemic or a hurricane. If you are in your car on in the street going home or trying to get to work, and there's a blockade on the red light, you get frustrated and you start blowing your horn, and the person
Mm-hmm.
in front of you gets your horn blast, but they did nothing to you. But the
Mm-hmm.
frustration and your need to get to where you're trying to go, you're just expressing that feeling. And so, as a public official myself, I often find myself having to take on the blows and the frustration of the community and the public at large, because everybody want to express themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes public officials, politicians, governments are the direct recipients of these kinds of frustrations. And so it is not for myself or my colleagues or the government at large to personally take on the frustration of the general public at large, but to acknowledge it, recognize it, and see it as as another reason why we have to improve on the communication, why we have to improve on the kind of work that we do, the satisfaction and our efforts. And so it is a challenging time for everyone. And I do not dismiss anyone's frustration. I acknowledge it, as have the government at large. And we are trying to make the best um, possible solutions and steps and avenues, take the right avenues that can remedy some of the challenges that people are facing. And I can tell you the challenge is great. We are at a point in our country where, as of mid September, sorry, 2020, the Bahamas National Insurance Board will no longer have any funds or monies to provide for the public at large, because we have had decades and years of contribution that have been made to the Bahamas National Insurance Board wiped out in a matter of 5 to 6 months. And so, certainly, you would appreciate that this is no um, easy task that any government, whether it is the current Free National Movement government or the government in waiting PLP, Progressive Liberal Party government, can remedy or bring solutions to bear in the immediate term.
Wow. Yes, I've been concerned about the fiscal situation myself. When the money stops flowing, it stops flowing. Um, this is actually uh, I just wanted to, before we, this is a good way to segue into speaking about your community specifically and the challenges facing it. But before we do that, um, I just wanted to comment on the seeming paradox that that exists here, because at least my social circle, or the people that I interact with, I see a lot of them on Facebook, and there seems to be a paradox in which they they constantly blame the Bahamian government as being incompetent, but in the same breath, they also see the government, or at least pretend that the government is all powerful. Like they're constantly making suggestions that they think the government could just do on a whim. And to me, it's just funny because I'm like, pick one. Are they all powerful or are they incompetent?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I guess to use a Bahamian aphorism, we are truly all mixed up like conch salad.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it. You know, it is a delicate balance, and to a certain extent, I don't blame the public at large for having an expectation, because
Mm,
everyone should have an expectation of their government, right? We elect governments to act and work on our behalf. But at the same token, we must trust our government to the same extent of our expectation to make the decisions that are in our best interest. And so we often find where persons want to elect the government, and
mhm.
at the same time they want to direct the government, and so
Mm,
it don't go it is not hand and glove. I
mm,
believe that elections are brought about because we elect individuals who we believe, once given the authority and the legislative constitutional right to govern and lead, that they will make decisions in our best interests. And so oftentimes we have society at large that want to control the direction and how governments go about achieving its goal. And so there's a delicate balance there. We must, as a government, provide a room and an arena where opinions and recommendations and suggestions can be heard, so that we can add people a part of the decision making process, where their participation in governance are not limited to every 5 years, but they have an active role and duty in the decision making process and the direction of their country. But simultaneously, we must recognize that when we authorize a government through the constitutional performance or participation of an election to act
mhm,
on citizens' behalf, governments make a decision based upon what they believe are in the overall citizens' best interest. So when we look at Facebook and we see the comments, we see the queries
mm,
and the innuendos, and the list goes on, we it is not for governments again to dismiss those comments, but it's
mm,
also for individuals to take note of those issues and challenges and propose solutions that will remedy the concerns that people have, but also to stay focused and to stay steady. We have a country in the Bahamas of 380,000 citizens. Out of that
mm,
number, on a good election day or a good election year, you will have about 190,000 of that amount who would actually register to vote. And out of that 190,000 registered voters, you will have about 160,000 who actually go to the polls to vote. And
mm,
so even though 160,000 people voted on election day, for the 380,000 people in its entirety, the whole 380,000 people feel as though they have a constitutional, inalienable right to direct and offer opinions as to how a government, whether they elected or did not elect, should run its daily affairs.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and to add on to that, it's one of the things that we do have is we actually do have one of the healthiest and stablest, most stable democracies, with a high voter turnout in the world.
Yeah.
So I am grateful for that. But yes, we as Bahamians, more of us should vote, and we should get involved. I liked your traffic light metaphor earlier about beeping at the light and the other cars around you receiving the results of your hostility, even though they did not necessarily cause it. It reminds me of I don't know if you're familiar with the American meme, but whenever something goes wrong in America, often people will say, "Thanks, Obama." Have you heard that one?
Yeah, yeah. We have our own local connotation that says "I blame Menace."
I blame Menace. I love it. That is very funny. How do you think the PM is handling all this? Do you think he goes on Facebook and Twitter and checks all these comments?
No, I believe from my direct and personal observation and communication with the Prime Minister, he's taken it very well. He is
Mm,
open and receptive to the comments and the feedback and suggestions of the public at large. So much so that we have a perfect example just recently over the past 24 to 48 hours we have seen where the prime minister had instituted a immediate effect 7-day lockdown, and the public at large, many members who would have called him, messaged him, persons who would have expressed their frustration and disappointment, he heard their concerns, and he would have subsequently retracted his 7-day immediate lockdown and reopen the economy and the country to allow for citizens to go to the food stores and pharmacies and water depots to prepare themselves for what I believe is still inevitable to be a 7-day lockdown whenever the time permits.
mm.
But that goes to
And
show
ostensibly the storm.
precisely, and the storm, correct, the pending hurricane that's approaching. So that goes to show that he is mindful of their concern. He is hearing them. He is
Mm,
listening to the concerns. Um, but importantly enough, he is expressing the humility enough to pivot where necessary. But you cannot take on the concerns and personally adorn yourself with the challenges of society at large. Because in a position as prime minister, you yourself become overwhelmed with the vast majority of issues that come across your desk. Because I often tell people you would never understand and appreciate the tough decisions that come across the prime minister's desk on a daily basis. And so when you see him make a decision, it is often
mm,
in the best interest of the vast majority of the Bahamian people or the people
mm.
that he or she have been elected to serve.
So I was actually incredibly impressed by how he reversed that decision because I mean to compare this with any other global leader, could you ever could you ever imagine, let's say, let's just use a random world leader, let's say Donald Trump. Could you ever imagine Donald Trump coming out and saying, I made an error of judgment and I would like to correct for it"?
Well, listen, I mean, from observation, I believe everyone can make their own assessment. But I can speak for the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, of which I reside, in the fact to say that, the Prime Minister made a mistake by not allowing everyone to prepare in a goodly amount of time or any kind of notice. He made a mistake, he took responsibility, and he fixed it. And that's what
Mm,
leadership is about, making the tough decisions, but having the humility enough to recognize and realize that when you make a decision, if it was not in the best interest or the best decision at the time, you are humble enough to take responsibility for that action and make the adjustment necessary to remedy the effects of that action or decision that you have made. And that's exactly
mm.
what the Prime Minister did.
No, I love it. I have a similar view of leadership. I think humility is definitely a crucial factor. Speaking of tough decisions, because I'd like to ask you this because this is one of the questions that I see often on Facebook. The answer is pretty obvious to me, but what would you say to the critics that are saying we should just open completely up? Don't let the many suffer for the few. If you're sick, say you have comorbidities or you're old, you're going to die anyway. Why stop everyone else? And people are saying, why break the economy for a few lives? And one thing, and just to add, just to clarify, what I don't think these people often realize is that a few lives, in our case, at 2% of the population, would be 15,000 Bahamians on the back of the deaths from Dorian. What would you say to these people on why don't we just open up and just let the cards? Why don't we follow the Trump strategy?
Okay, again, the what works for America will certainly not work for the Bahamas. Whereas America have some 350 million people, the Bahamas is just 380,000 380,000 people. And so, by and large, right there is the complete difference in terms of what the prospects can bring about and what is realistically possible and impossible for both our nations. But, uh, to, to your
And not to
point,
mention, we actually have, I don't know if they know this, but we have a much less robust medical infrastructure. We only have, say, what do we have? 70 ventilators, one major hospital,
mhm,
and a few
pre-
clinics.
precisely, right? So we have about 70 to 100 maximum ventilators, and we have one major hospital, as you mentioned, the Margaret Hospital, that's in the capital island of New Providence in Nassau, the Bahamas, and we have some 17 major inhabited islands out of the 700 islands and keys that make up the Bahamas. And on those other 15, 16 major inhabited islands, there are hospitals or more or less clinics, clinics that are in buildings of just about 2 to 3 room facilities shift clinics that operate as hospitals for individuals that live on the respective islands throughout the Bahamas. We don't have the luxury and the ability to maneuver and to do as America does. But what
Mm.
we do have is the opportunity to make a decision that I believe that uh, the vast group of Bahamians would adhere to. We don't often see the kinds of protests in its large numbers that take place in the U.S. We don't often see the large revolts by the Bahamian society against government orders and recommendations and policies put in place. So we have to look at the Bahamas in its entirety in terms of we can have one person who is connected to 50 to 100 other persons. Similarly, for example, we can take one COVID 19 positive case individual and track that individual, as was the case in Freeport, Grand Bahama, track that
Mm-hmm.
one individual to 100 different persons who would have been called and placed into quarantine because that one person came into contact with that amount of persons. In
Mm-hmm.
and so when we times that one person by a 10 or 20 persons. We're talking 2 to 3,000 people minimum in quarantine, right? And
Wow.
so when we look at 2 to 3,000 people in quarantine, and we're talking about going back to work or opening the economy to get back to work and ignoring or expecting those who have comorbidities and other um, um, diseases or non-communicable diseases, etc., to
Mhm.
just self quarantine at home, it is not realistic because
Mhm.
in order to return to work, you need your full complement of staff. You need at least 50% of your staff to do the work and to carry the burden and to do what the heavy lifting, whatever that job may require. We can't do that when we have 1,500 plus cases because you could
Mhm.
time each one of those cases by a minimum of 10 to 20 persons. And then when
Mhm.
you times that by 10 to 20 persons, you would see where the workforce that is needed to return back to work is not even there because they have to quarantine for that 7 to 14-day period
Yeah, so
because of exposure.
that's almost more than 10% of our population that is in quarantine trying to spread the virus. And yeah, that so even if we wanted to open the economy, we really couldn't. So
Precisely.
the only way to open up successfully is well, we need to beat and suppress the virus, and then we
Yes.
can and only then can we restart the economic engine.
Precisely. Spot on.
So I'd like to I'd like to move on to the specific challenges facing Bahamians. Maybe we could discuss your community. So, your community, you are the member of parliament, you represent Bain and Grantstown. Bain and Grantstown is one of the oldest and most historic communities, and also it's unfortunately known for being perhaps less economically developed. It does suffer from a bit of poverty. Would you say?
Yes. Correct.
Would you speak to some of the specific challenges some of your constituents are facing and how they're overcoming those? Because even someone like me, I'm middle class, but I'm seeing the pain, and some of these some people, if you haven't worked for 6 months, your bank account, if you had one, is going to look pretty dry. I know a statistic before the pandemic. 60% of Bahamians could not afford an unexpected $500 bill. So I can't imagine what things are looking like now.
Hmm. Well, yes, you're absolutely spot on. It was the 2016 report by Governor John Roll, who's the governor of the Central Bank of the Bahamas, in the report that noted that some 60% plus of Bahamians have less than $500 in their bank accounts. And so when you take that number, and that was pre-pandemic, and add that number into the current reality of this pandemic, you could comfortably now expand that number from 60 to some whopping 80% of Bahamians at large. Because many of the businesses and communities that service the Bahamian people in terms of employment have closed down. When you look at areas such as mines, the inner city or over the hill area that we refer to, which my community in Grandstown is the most impoverished community by and large in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And my community in its entirety have some roughly 25 to 26,000 people that reside there because of the densely population of the community. In one particular home, you could have a maximum of 25 persons living in one particular home. And so
Wow.
this home that I'm referring to would be a wooden home that have multiple added on departments. So you could have up to 10, 12 different added on clapboard homes or rooms rather that was added or built onto a 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom room facility. And so
Mm-hmm.
particularly in the Bahamas, where tourism is our number one industry, providing a whopping 70% of direct and indirect employment. The vast majority of that employment are individuals who live in the inner city or over the hill areas, that of Bain and Grandstown and Centerville and Nassau Village and the likes. So the tourism
Mm.
industry in the Bahamas, which is a high intensity labor market and requires a lot of physical labor in terms of the room attendants, or what you call the maid, the
Mm-hmm.
janitress, the bus boy, and and the list goes on.
Our
Those are the
economy
kind.
really our economy really is labor intensive. Then we are hard workers, and this has just removed our opportunity to work.
Correct. So, particularly the inner city areas are the areas that really furnished or provided the hotel industry in the Bahamas with its labor force, because it's very
Mm.
labor intensive. When you look at the laundry mat facilities in the hotels, the bus boys, the room attendants, etc., those are the people who are strong and enough and provide the physical labor for these hotel industry. And and so it shows a direct proportion from the industry being down and out to the
Mm-hmm.
expedited or increased skyrocketed unemployment that is happening now in the inner city areas. So it's directly
Wow.
proportional.
Wow. So in a in a sense, this pandemic is actually negatively affecting those who are already in the least fortunate situation. So this is actually going to cause an increase in income inequality.
Precisely. So it will more than not just double, but in my estimation, triple it. And I say that because when you look at a period of 5 to 6 months in counting of the amount of persons who are disadvantaged or placed out of work because of the tourism industry in the Bahamas being at a standstill, it is mind boggling and crippling.
Wow. Okay. So and just to for anyone who might not know, how is everyone surviving? We're not an agricultural nation. We don't necessarily produce all of our own food. We're service based. How is everyone getting food and the water and medicine that they need to survive?
Well, again, we refer back to the Bahamas National Insurance Board that are providing the financial support for as long as it possibly can up to mid-September for the vast Bahamians in terms of the unemployment benefit, which is now on its knees, as well as the government instituted Rapid Bahamian or Rapid Food Network that is providing food throughout the community for individuals who need it, who will go on the Bahamas Food Network and sign up for food assistance, and they will get an email back as to where they can go in their community to receive food parcels. to be able to survive during this COVID-19 period time. But even with NIB, we've came to a point because constitutionally, NIB, the Bahamas National Insurance Board, is only mandated by law to offer unemployment assistance for a maximum of 13 weeks. We have elapsed those 13 weeks, and the Bahamas government, in its consideration for the Bahamian people, have extended that benefit period for an additional 13 weeks. So you can understand the pressure that is placed on the reserves that the Bahamas have, the pressure that's placed on the financial sustainability in terms of a long-term sustainability plan, and the list goes on. And so we are at crucial junctures and pivotal periods in our country. And I'm optimistic because we have just instituted the Economic Committee that houses some of the best economists and financial analysts that our country can offer, who are part of the board. And I'm optimistic about what plan or proposal they would put forward in the coming days and weeks ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm excited to hear it, and I know that many Bahamians are excited. Yeah, it's such a tough time, and some of the things you can often go without. You can eat light, you can drink light, and keep your pantry light. But one of the things that really keeps us going through this time is hope. So it'll be good to see that plan. I know many Bahamians will be comforted by it. Um, so one of the unique things about the pandemic, it's not like any other sort of crisis. It's not like, say, not that we've ever been in a war, really, but I mean, we did send troops for World War II. We sent a couple battalions over. But the thing about being in a war is, or in another type of crisis, is you can all huddle together, group together, and rely on each other and sort of survive on everyone else's strengths. One of the unique issues with this crisis is that's precisely the opposite of what we need to be doing. As we both know, Bahamians are incredibly social people. We love our parties. We have large extended families. Everyone knows everyone. You can go to the food store, the supermarket, downtown to the bars, and there is not a chance that you won't see someone that you know. So in this time where this literally the safest thing that you can do is to stay away from other people. It's a tough position. So I think people almost feel powerless. So I want you to, if you can, speak to personal empowerment. So one of the things that I've undertaken, and I'm fortunate enough to have a little piece of square footage or property in front of my house. I've started a garden to grow some of my own fruits and vegetables, to feed myself, to sort of take some of the stress off of the food supply chain, because as you know already, but our international listeners might not know, we actually import 95% of our food, maybe even 98%. What can people do to personally empower themselves to help dig themselves out of the situation that they are in? Maybe lighten the stress.
Well, again, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of the challenges, the unique challenge in terms of our culture as a Bahamian people and our need for socialization and our hospitality, which also goes back to our tourism industry, why we have been in this tourism and hospitality industry for so long, because of our enriched hospitality feel and camaraderie with the not just Bahamians but with the general public and with guests alike. The
Mm-hmm.
the one thing that I will continue to impress upon us as a Bahamian people is to embrace technology, because technology, I believe, will play a major role in our life and livelihood going forward on a daily basis. Just as you and I are now communicating on this podcast, while I may not be able to physically see you or touch you, just to hear the sound of your voice and to be able to communicate about issues that are relevant to society and the global community at large is empowering. And so, the new trend, how do we get Bahamians to Facebook, to WhatsApp, to Zoom and Skype call their friends, family, and loved ones to stay in that constant communication? What this is also doing as well is bringing families together, husbands and wives, mothers and children, fathers and children, who are at times when we are on curfew or lockdown or in our homes for extended periods of time, we are getting to know, mothers and fathers are getting to know their children a lot better than they did in the past, because they were so busy trying to get out to work and being at work for long extended periods of times. Cousins and
Mm-hmm.
family members, brothers and sisters who would not ordinarily ask their sibling, how was their day? What are you doing? Play a game of dominoes or Monopoly, etc., with each other. They are doing that today. And so this is building our human connectivity, and building that kind of camaraderie and
Mm-hmm.
personal connection that was beginning to deteriorate prior to the onset of COVID-19.
Yeah, yeah, I have to agree with everything you just said there. I feel very similarly to you. I almost feel like as a nation we were becoming. I was a bit fearful that we were becoming too superficial or materialistic, and one of the unlikely benefits from all this is really just the stronger connections that we're forging with family new our old and new family and friends. I feel like it's almost like the Bahamian spirit is being rekindled in a way. So, Travis, we're coming up on an hour now, and I just wanted to I'm getting mindful of your time, and I just wanted to thank you for being the first guest, and I wanted to thank you for just so articulately and emotively helping me talk to me and describe talking to me and describing the situation that we're in together right now.
Mhm. Absolutely, thank you, man. It is a pleasure to be a part of this, and I look forward to all of the other conversations that you'll have, and the information and knowledge that will begin from listening to it.
Sure, sure. If you just had, what I want to do now is, if you just had a couple more minutes, I wanted to ask you um, five rapid fire questions, just to end the podcast on a light note.
Okay.
And also, if you had any social media or links that you might have that our listeners international could maybe visit if they wanted to support your community or any projects you might have. Do you have those links or the name of any of these projects on hand, or should I stick them in the show notes
Yeah.
afterwards?
Well, you can do both. You can stick it in the shell notes, as well as I can definitely provide for the community direct if you want to reach me for the work that we're doing in our inner city communities or impoverished communities in the Bahamas. It's called Baines and Grantstown MP, which is the Facebook page that you can go on and send information to the messenger and let us know how you're willing to help, and we'll definitely reach out to you and get in contact and to receive your help as best as we can, and definitely show our appreciation for it. Um, as well as my email that I can put out there, which is Travis Robinson underscore 1130 at hotmail.com. That's Travis Robinson underscore 1130 at hotmail.com. For anybody who may want to send me an email message expressing what they thought about the conversation, how they are possibly able to help, any contribution they want to make towards the work that I am doing in the inner city, the poor and impoverished communities in the Bahamas, and we can definitely get in touch.
That's fantastic. Really, and of course, I'm just such a fan of the work that you've been doing and that you've done so far. So let's do these. Let's end on a fun note. Let me ask you these five rapid fire questions. You can answer in one word, or you can elaborate. It's the same. It's however you feel. So, question one: Kalik or Sans? Which is the
Sans,
better beer?
sans bear.
Sans? Nice. I'm a Sans man myself. I like to support the slightly more Bahamian company.
Yes.
What now? Question number two. What is your favorite family island?
Exuma.
Exuma. Beautiful,
Exuma,
beautiful. Yes, that
because of the water and the swimming pigs and the tranquility of the Exuma Keys, that you can just go on and marvel at the sea.
beautiful. I'm sure it's the favorite of a lot of the people who might be listening to this podcast also. Question number three. What is your favorite style of conch?
I like Scotch conch, the original traditional Scotch conch with just the conch and the onion and the sour, because it gives you that rich taste without all of the fruits and vegetables that I tend to believe deteriorate the taste of the conch, and so I love
Hmm.
the Scotch.
No, you're a purist. You're a real man of culture. I could tell, and I'm sure you take it spicy. Am I right?
Absolutely spot on.
Okay. Question number three. Is the Bahamas a real place?
It is the most realest place on the planet.
To anyone who's listening who doesn't know that question, you could Google it. It's a joke that the more millennial Bahamians like to make every now and again when they're stuck behind someone at a traffic light. And last question number five. This is the magic wand question. If I gave you a magic wand right now and you could wave it and change one thing about the Bahamas, what would you change?
I will change the pride and dignity that Bahamians have towards the Bahamas in its entirety. I believe that if more Bahamians can travel to our family islands and have a greater appreciation of what the Bahamas have to offer, then we would be more prideful in what we have. Oftentimes, we have a lot of Bahamians that travel to America and come back home and say and compare us to America and what we coulda, shoulda, had, would have had. But I believe that if they realize that 7.2 million visitors from America come to the Bahamas to vacation here every year, they would have a greater appreciation for the jewel that God has blessed us with. So if I could wave my wand and have one thing, that would be the pride that Bahamians have in our country.
That's better than mine. I couldn't agree anymore. We are truly blessed to be born and to live in this nation. So, Travis, thank you so much for being the inaugural guest. It was fantastic. I had a great time. I hope we can do this again. Maybe discuss tourism or hospitality in the Bahamas, or one of the other issues that we have over mutual interest in.
Absolutely. I would look forward to it. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and thank you for having me.
Sure. Hey, thank you. And as always, as we all have to say during this time, stay safe. And I hope you and your friends and family are safe and well.
Yes, they are. I hope the same for you as well.
Okay. Thank you, Travis. Bye.
All right. Be blessed.
So, thanks for listening to my first podcast. I'm actually recording this before we start the podcast itself, but I had time, so I thought I'd talk about why I made this. Three reasons. One is I love podcasts, and with all the time we have now, I have been listening to a lot of them, and I've always been interested in starting my own. Um, Two, it's a confusing time for everyone, and I'm responsible for a large share of that confusion. I am truly confused as to what is going to happen to our country in the future, and possibly even in this week. There are two potential hurricanes coming this week. We just had one last week, and it was mild, but there's a lot of questions in the air, and me being a curious person, I wanted to explore some of these issues, and I thought, why not record it? So international listeners or fellow Bahamians can come along for this journey of exploration. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you liked it, you can subscribe, you can review it, you can do all of the other things, all of the things that podcasters typically tell you to do. So thank you so much, and yeah, I'll see you in the next episode.